you are going to see behind the scenes of interviews with 3 amazing deal makers. You're going to meet someone who's built a £17 million empire in just 15 months, someone who buys businesses for a living, and someone who's just done his first deal, an 8-figure whopper of a deal. It's a great series of interviews. You're going to love it. Sam, great to see you again, twice in 1 week. Take a seat.
Thank you.
So Sam, you joined Mastermind in 2020 and you've done an awful lot since then, but I imagine you had also done an awful lot leading up to Mastermind. So give us the background story. What led you to the world of business acquisition?
Yeah, it's probably not the most orthodox route, I would say. So my first job when I left school was playing football. So I played for my hometown club, Luton Town, for just over 2 years, kind of full time. In the end, I wasn't quite good enough, so I kind of dropped out of that and fell into, it sounds strange, but fell into the world of finance and accountancy. And it's partly because my father was an accountant, so that was the kind of the route there. And it was just something that I was always comfortable with at school, around numbers and that sort of thing. So I kind of fell into that. And basically, I spent the majority of my career, so 20 plus years, in the travel industry. With a company that most people will know, which is TUI, which is the largest kind of tour operating business in the world. So I spent a number of years, got promoted sort of every year, and I was promoted on the back of wanting it more than other people.
Okay.
I think, and I think that came out a little bit from the football side. So,
Well, I was going to say, I wondered whether there's a link between a competitive nature and wanting to win.
Yeah.
So you've done three deals.
Yep.
So what's the annual group revenue, just so we can get a sense of scale?
Yeah, so we'll do probably just under 17 million of revenue for this year, the year ending June, so in a few months' time.
Okay, fantastic. And has that grown since you took over these 3 businesses, or is that what you bought?
So the first business was doing 5 million when we acquired that, and that was only 15 months ago. So December, where are we now? This is March, isn't it? So yeah, about 15 months ago, December 21.
Oh, so the first deal was 15 months ago?
Yes, the first deal was 15 months ago.
I hadn't appreciated that you've done all of this in the last 15
months.
Yes.
Okay.
Well done.
And the fourth one is in the process now. So we signed heads of terms last week. So that's
fantastic.
That's good.
Oh, congratulations. That's wonderful.
So the first one was 5 million. That's going to do 6 million this year. So we have grown that business. And then the other 2, we're only joined the group in one in July and one in August. So it's kind of 6 months, 7 months in. So it's kind of first year.
So you don't expect to see any immediate growth. It's about getting your feet under the table and actually understanding what you've bought.
No, absolutely. I think the other thing with regards to what we're trying to do is the model really is to try and replicate what we've done, adding more and more businesses at that sweet spot of between sort of 500,000 to maybe 1.5 million of EBITDA, paying a reasonable multiple. So not trying to, do anyone out of what they deserve, but paying a reasonable multiple for that in a good structure that enables us to use surplus cash in the business to fund any equity in that. So we don't need to then keep putting more money in. And I think it becomes then an M&A model, assuming that you've got some sustainable cash flows ultimately. So predictable, sustainable cash flows. So what we're looking for much more now, and you touched on it earlier, is the recurring or reoccurring revenue, where actually it's far more predictable, and therefore you've got this, unless you've got big churn in the contracts, you've got this predictable cash flows going forward. And more of those, we don't really need to be doing 20% growth in each business on top, No. In fact, if you told me they were all going to be stable for the next 10 years, it would probably be absolutely fine.
And something you said in your presentation to the Mastermind group last week, which is something that we've said many times before, and you said it so clearly, was that the working cap negotiation is as important, if not more important, than the actual price and terms, because you do not want a business that requires a cash injection 3 months after you bought it. You want something that has surplus cash, and that becomes part of the deal, because that that is just so much more critical. You almost
Yeah.
pay more for the business
Yeah.
to get the surplus cash.
It is, and you realise switching from me from sort of large corporate, which was always cash was never an issue. The whole entire business was focused on EBITDA and growth, into a small business context where, because of certain cycles, maybe one big customer over here, etc., cash is becomes critical. So then you're focused more around the cash. So probably on the first deal, I wasn't so focused on the cash, and probably we didn't leave the right level of cash in the business, and that's the one that we've probably struggled with. Although, to be fair, the market sort of has gone
For other
against.
reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we wouldn't, just for that reason. But if we'd have had more cash in it, we wouldn't have had so many issues. So now that becomes a bigger part of the conversation, and I think that gets left out. Like you say, I think it's the headline price of the multiple of X.
Yes.
But actually, what you want to negotiate is to make sure that you're leaving cash in the business to service any working capital in the short term.
Sam, thank you so much. I will see you again soon.
See you
Thank
again
you,
soon.
Sam.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Buying a business is just so rewarding. And I put together a free training showing you exactly how I do it. If you look in the video description below this video, there is a link. You click the link, you're taken through to the training, watch the training, and I'll show you exactly how to buy a business successfully. Dan, fantastic to see you again. Take a seat.
So Dan, last year you did your first deal, and it was a whopper
That's right.
of a deal. It was an 8-figure
It
deal,
was, yep.
which I always say to people: aim high, think big. You did exactly that. I want to hear all about it. So first of all, tell us about the type of business it is.
So the business is a specialist plant hire business. So we basically have a fleet of trucks that do a thing called vacuum excavation. So we excavate soil by using a giant vacuum cleaner, in very simple terms.
Okay.
And it's a growing sector. There's a number of companies in it. I think it started in the UK in about 2005, but there's increasing demand for it. And unlike some sectors in construction, it's still very profitable. It's a good.
So this is where, because I've, as you know, I've seen one of these in my local high street where they're trying to find the source of the water leak and digging up the high street with all these pipes that go back decades.
That's right.
And getting between them, and then they put this big straw down.
It's like an elephant's trunk, basically.
Yeah, it is like an elephant's trunk.
On a
And
remote
they
controlled arm.
suck out all the dirt.
That's right.
And this equipment is huge, and it looks very expensive.
It is. So a new one will set you back. There are different types with multiple fans for suction, but your average twin fan one is now going for about 440,000. So they're very, very expensive.
Yes.
And unlike other plants, you really need it on the road working. You can't really have it off the road, waiting for repair or anything like that.
Because if it's not on the road, it's not generating
it's not
income.
earning money. The first thing you do is you obviously get everyone in and talk to the team. So I've been blessed. It's a good team. There was probably one person in the team who was of concern, who actually left the business literally just as the deal was being done. And interestingly, has moved up the road, running a maintenance place for the people who make some of the vehicles. But I was blessed with him leaving because, and I'll talk about his legacy in a minute. So we had a new guy arriving at the same time, and this was to run the sort of workshop and the fleet. But the rest of the team is intact. It's the same people. So there was that initial conversation with them. They were thankfully very positive about the change. So I think they welcomed having some new leadership coming in.
I think it's interesting that you should say that, because that is often the case.
It is, yeah.
Despite the sort of the enduring loyalty to the former owner, there is the excitement that sometimes that ideas will be listened to, things will be modernised, and there's a bigger, brighter future ahead.
Yeah, and I think coming out of COVID, I think they'd had a hard COVID, not financially, they hadn't, but I think the owner had sort of checked out to a certain extent. It'd been a very long process buying the business. So that can't have been easy, the uncertainty of that. So there's the initial thing of meeting the new team. And then you do this thing where you set about getting into the business and finding out what it's really like as a business. And some things were good, some things were bad. So the bad thing, there were a couple of people in the business who I was told were critical, really. I couldn't afford to lose them. One was the sort of number two, the sales director guy, who's great, and he is critical to the business, and he's a very good guy. The other one was this guy who was down in the workshop, who was a fitter on these vehicles, and he was described as, I think, in the vacuum excavation world, I was told that he was, if he didn't know it, it wasn't worth knowing, basically. And it was the complete opposite. I mean, he was lazy. He didn't really know anything about anything. He'd been in the business for eons.
That's an incredible piece of reputation marketing.
That's right. So I sort of
he was
came
the
in
opposite of what everyone expected.
So I latch on to stuff like that very quickly. So I, with the new fleet guy, we were sort of watching this bloke and we were thinking, well, that isn't what we're expecting. So to cut a long story short, we got him out. And one of the things about when you find something that's not right in a business, it can be a very big opportunity. So the loss really was the previous owner's loss, because I worked out that the utilization of these vehicles, there are basically two metrics that are important. There's how much we charge for a vehicle a day for the renting it out with a bloke to run it and the various extras. So you've got the price per day, and then you've got this thing which airlines know all about, which is utilization. So 440,000 a pop for a new one, they need to be out working. And I've sort of worked out the industry seems to be working at around 70%. And the reason for that is most people service the truck part and the actual sort of vacuum excavation part with third parties. And since COVID, it's got much worse. But certainly in the UK, if you need your truck serviced, your average, even the Mercedes dealerships, are quite happy to take weeks before a part will arrive, and you've lost your asset. So there was a great opportunity to bring all of this in-house. So between the end of June, when the deal went through, and the end of August, we sort of sorted all of that out. Staff changes, we got lots more fitters in, which are sort of steadied down now. We had a bit of turnover with them. I was fairly ruthless about that. But we started bringing the maintenance in-house, and we've just, in the new year, finished installing a vehicle inspection pit, as well as these things that jack them up. So we can do everything you need to do HGV-wise, apart from the MOT in-house.
So what impact does that have on the business?
Well, the impact in simple terms is if you do the run rate with the same sort of capacity, if you like, with the fleet, your 5.2 should be 7.2.
So tell us what that means.
Million revenue.
Million, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So 70%.
So with the same people,
yeah,
the same fleet,
yeah,
by improving the efficiency, by not sending vehicles out to be mended, serviced out of the business, but keeping it all in house.
Yeah.
Your revenue will increase £2 million.
Yeah. So if you get
and
to
you've
a high
got a 40% margin.
Yes. Yeah. Now there's extra cost in there, but the interesting thing is your cost dynamic changes. So instead of your top 5 costs being third party maintenance people, etc., it's now more headcount and stuff like that. But the two sort of balanced each other out so far. Now we've got a higher revenue figure, which I'm not going to tell you, because there was also the other thing that the company didn't do anything with before, was there were 12 excavators out the back, which they're like miniature ones. They're not on a truck chassis. They're remote controlled on these tracks. And they're made by the sort of the owner's son's company down the road. So they were just sitting out the back. He never really did much with these, and we are now. So that's added a further injection of revenue.
And you already own those assets?
We already own them outright, yeah.
Interesting.
So it's all about, so in a business, I suppose, you know, when you take it over, it's good if you have some things that are bad, if you can turn them into value, because then
That's interesting because so
that's
many
quite a
people
good thing.
look for perfect businesses to buy, and
Yeah,
when diligence shows something isn't quite right, they go, "Oh well,
mm,
I'm walking away
that's right.
from this deal."
Yeah,
When actually you're seeing those situations as an opportunity.
yeah. And now I didn't see, I didn't have the expertise, and this is the thing about due diligence is I couldn't go and look at these vehicles. They were all out and look at them with a fine tooth comb like an HGV technician can. And I wonder if I'd known that the maintenance of those chassis wasn't as good as it should have been, what my attitude would have been buying the business. Maybe I'd have tried to negotiate the price down.
Okay.
I don't know, but it's worked out good. I mean that's been fixed, which is great. The other thing is that when your fleet's more reliable and you're turning things around quicker, if something breaks down on site and you can send a fitter to fix it quickly, that gives confidence to your salespeople. They're much more confident about maintaining that higher utilization. I could sit on the business for 5 years, pay off all the debt, and just sell it as it was with a bit of growth, getting a few vehicles in a year, and it would be very nice. So that's my sort of minimum.
So if you
Um,
basically it's do nothing
yeah,
and it's still a great result.
yeah. Or as has been the case, if there's lots of opportunity there to do better, when we already are doing better, then maybe be more aggressive with the future organic growth plans,
Hmm.
which we are being. We're getting another 7 vehicles this year coming in, so we're leasing them in,
Okay.
and we'll carry that on into next year. So go for a bigger growth story, so we've got something very attractive to sell.
Hmm.
Digitized business, modern management team, state of the art health and safety, much more modern, bigger fleet, revenue doing that.
Sounds
Good
very
thing to
good.
sell. And then,
Yes.
of course, the other aspect is acquisition. So, as I said, when I came in, we've got one very strong lead already to do another acquisition, not quite as big as us, but sizable. So, I'm hoping to do at least one of those. And that's really, as you teach, it's the best way to grow, to do the acquisitions. So, we're
So that,
looking
so
at
that would bring your revenues in at over 10 million at that
yeah,
point.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, organically, we should be able to get, we should be butting up against that by the end of next year. Going back to my earlier life experience, the only way you really progress and learn in life, in my view, and have a rewarding life is if you step outside your comfort zone. So most human beings are born in the town or village, or they're born in one place. They tend to work close to that. They tend to, you know, never really step out of their comfort zone. They don't go far. But you've really got to step outside your comfort zone and have a bit of faith. And I think the program that you ran, that Dealmakers program, was different to anything else I've done in that you weren't learning theory. It was a practical process
Yes.
to go through. Now you can step off at any point. I could say, well, I don't want to be a deal maker. I've got my company now and I'm going to run it for 20 years. I could do that. But you don't have to do the whole process. But if you want to buy a business, it definitely works. So I would say get on with it. And I'm a good example of someone who didn't. I spent the best part of 2 years painting a house, gardening, thinking about it, dilly dallying around. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Great
I
to
will
see you
see you at the
again.
next Inner Circle meeting.
I will. Thank you very much.
Have a
Bye
good
now.
day. Bye bye. When buying a business, you need a great lawyer on your team. So why not use mine? His name is John Andrews and his details are on the screen. Come and take a seat. Would you like a tea or possibly a coffee? We might have.
Possibly a coffee would be great.
So Nathan, you started off as a biologist. So help me out here. How did you go from being a biologist to an acquisitions entrepreneur?
God, we're going back quite a long time now. So, I studied molecular biology at university in Huddersfield. And as part of my gap year, I sort of worked in the NHS in research and development. And part of what I did for my department was I purchased things. So I was on the purchasing side as well. So I used to buy things like cleaning consumables, wipes, that sort of thing, as just for the lab and stuff like that. And I noticed that everything was incredibly expensive. So this is probably like I say, this is probably 16, 17 years ago, something like that. I'd buy something and realise that, there's a big monopoly here for companies that are supplying the NHS. So one of the things that happened was I think I was buying a fork or something silly, and it was like £4 or something, and I was thinking, this is outrageous. So I started looking into it, and actually there were no smaller companies on NHS framework, so agreements to supply the NHS. And I thought, well, how hard can it be? So I sort of went off, knew the lingo. I'd worked there obviously a little bit as part of my sandwich year at uni, and I bid on an NHS contract, and I won it. So this was me at university, my final year, won a share of a £39 million NHS contract. Didn't have any money, Jonathan. I was a student. And so I had to scramble around looking for investors, people that could help me. Obviously, I knew the product and the technical aspect of the product, but that's where it ended. So sort of scrambled around to find investors, did that, got some people on board that had worked in the NHS as non-execs. And fast forward a few more years, and I ended up selling that business to a chemical supplier who wanted to get into the NHS and vertically integrate. And then I thought, oh, this is good, and realised that the money was in selling the business. More money in selling the business than the whole
Than actually
5
operating.
years of operating the
Well,
business.
it's funny you should say that, because my very first business, 2.5 years of operating it, made more money when I sold it in those 2.5 years.
That's right,
Lesson learned very quickly. And you also joined the long list of entrepreneurs who started their business out of their university dorm room, as they say in the States, but halls of residence here
That's right,
in
yeah.
the UK. I'm
Yeah.
thinking of Michael Dell as a very famous one with Dell Computing. So so that was your first taste of business and what it could do for you. So that was like a 5-year sprint, that part of it. What happened next?
So I thought, well, what about acquiring businesses? Surely I don't have the resources for that. So speaking to some of the lenders I'd worked with in the past, turns out that it was possible, as you'll know. And so started doing that on a very small scale. So buying companies that were 2, 3, 400,000 pound turnover, and then quickly sort of added value to them in order to be able to then sell them. So either a buyout of whoever's working in the business after I'd bought it, or some sort of trade sale or integration with somebody else. And then realize, this is really cut down the amount of time it takes to invest and then produce a realizable return
Yes.
in a period that makes sense
Compared to a startup.
compared to investing in a startup or starting something myself. So started doing that a little bit more. The pace of deal making sort of increased. Took on more built a deal team over the 18 months after that. All kind of coming up to today. So last year, I think we spent about £8 million on acquisitions, a gross value of business purchases. Some of which we've exited, some which have gone very well, some which have not gone so very well. And that's basically all we do now, is we buy and sell businesses. So we're kind of like a quasi private equity firm where I'm the only investor. So that's how we kind of present ourselves. And we're doing very well. So I think we employ about 100 people now across
Fantastic.
the UK. So it's
And that's
pretty
100
good
people
concern
in the businesses.
in the businesses that we've acquired.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Okay, now that's great. And you're saving jobs, creating new jobs along the way as well. So let's talk about some of those deals. So maybe you could pick out a couple that would be the most interesting to our viewers and listeners.
Interesting. So one of the first businesses we bought was a consumables business, so similar to the one that I sold right at the start. So I thought I'll get back into the area that I know quite well. So we bought that for a very low purchase price. I think it was like £200,000 turnover, and I think we paid about £80,000 for the business. So we try and obviously conserve our resources, so we try and put as little equity into the deal as possible, which makes sense. That's what everybody does. And that one was particular, albeit a small deal, it was particularly good. So I think there must have been about £10,000 of equity that went into that deal, which subsequently over the following sort of month or two we gained back through the profits
Okay,
of the
so
business.
let me
So
just say that differently, just so that everyone is very, very clear in what you did here. So, business £200,000 of annual revenue. You effectively bought it with you did buy it with £10,000 of your own money, but then you were able to get that money back out. So it was a sort of a cash neutral
that's right.
investment.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, within about a month. The rest of the purchase price was made up of a little bit of cash at bank and some asset finance. So obviously increasing our return on investment, which is what you do. Another good deal, which was particularly large, was a acquisition in the Northeast. So we bought a warehousing and distribution company. We spent £5.5 million on that acquisition. And I think the equity into that deal was probably around 200,000. So, which was also made up of paying for the fees of lawyers and legals and things like that, stamp duty. So that was a good deal, funded mainly through a freehold property, which was in the business. Again, a bit of asset finance, being careful not to over leverage. And again, within a short order, we earned back the money that we'd put into the deal originally. So over that time, built up some very good relationships with tertiary lenders and now a couple of private backers that I've got. So those were the two noteworthy deals which were particularly good financially for us, as well as the ease of doing the deal.
So we've got acquisition criteria. We talked about culture. We've talked about the money. We've talked about branding and integration. What other things do people need to consider when it comes to after they bought the business? Maybe they bought a couple of businesses. What should they be thinking about?
Well, if they've already integrated, I'd say, well, what's the plan? What's the exit strategy? If that's what you're looking to do. I mean, we're very transactional in terms of we buy stuff in order to sell stuff. That is what we do. So maybe I'm probably speaking from a little bit of a different field. But I'd say, what is the plan? Are you looking to build your business bigger? Are you looking to exit? Because there are things you ought to really be doing if you are looking to exit. The way you format the business, who's in the business, are your team in the business? So for me, when we buy a business, I make sure that my team, our business, is sort of, I know the typical cliche of working on it, not in it, but I don't want any of my team to become operational in their role within the business that we've bought, because then I can't sell it unless they're happy to go. So I think it's that traditional age-old, make sure you're redundant completely from the business, so that if you're run over tomorrow, the business still operates.
Yes.
And we go to great lengths to buy businesses that are not owner operated. And if they are, again, it's a lot of work to make them not owner operated. And we haven't got the time to run businesses. So we need to buy things that are sort of perfect anyway in that regard, in order to then be able to resell or actually add value in an effective way without having to run the business as well. So I think that's another important thing, just sort of skipping around there.
And this also comes back to the larger deals.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
smaller deals are owner operated because they
Always.
can't afford to have other people running it. There isn't enough spare cash to employ those people. So the owner has to do 3 jobs themselves in order to make ends meet. So when you go for that larger business, it comes with a management team, because a single individual is unlikely to be owner operating, managing a multi-million-pound business.
That's right.
There's always exceptions, but not likely to be that person.
Yeah, so that's what we target. And that's another reason for doing the bigger deals. It's not just the lending criteria and the return on investment for us. It's is it saleable? Does it have an incumbent management team? Does it have a management team that are not going to leave? So going back to this due diligence again, kind of getting a bit technical, but making sure that the people that are incumbent in the business don't have some sort of connection to the previous owner, whether it be family, friends, because they'll go. In every
Absolutely.
single time that I've done a
100%.
deal, they leave. Some of them might stay a little bit longer.
Despite those reassurances, oh no, they're happy here.
they're fine.
They're never going anywhere. They will walk out.
Yeah, no, they do eventually, and we've had it. But just really it should make sense, shouldn't it? If you want to sell this business, another buyer will want to buy it, typically as an investment, so they don't want to be working in the business. So surely that should be the aim anyway. Whether you're looking to exit or not, you should build to exit, because it's good
Yes.
for you as well, isn't it? Ultimately, you want to earn the money and not have to do the work, because if you do the work, you can't invest more. You know, it's resource
Exactly.
allocation, isn't it? I'm here quite a bit.
Thank you so much. Oh, right. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Jonathan.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
it's been a
No,
pleasure.
been brilliant. Really good. I'll let you know when they're going out, and maybe you can give it a promo to your
Oh, yeah.
followers as well.